This is the Biz News Podcast, one-on-one conversations with experts in business and personal development.
In addition to its tragic death toll, the COVID pandemic has prompted unprecedented business change, from reinvented business models to reliance on a virtual business environment. So what's next? Well, says Pamela Hackett, global CEO of the international consultancy Proudfoot, it will be the urgent need to re-engage with employees. She joins us on this Biz News podcast. Let's start, if you would, Pam, by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and your company.
Sure. I'm the CEO of Proudfoot Consulting, and I think we're the best kept secret in town. We've been around for about 75 years and actually started by Alexander Proudfoot himself in Chicago. And he believed one major thing. He believed that strategy was great, but unless you could actually implement it and execute it, it wasn't worth its salt. So he was an ex-McKinsey consultant. So he said, okay, I need to get into the world of actually implementing strategy. And that's what Proudfoot does. We work with client teams to really make sure that we add really valuable bottom line impact by doing things differently, by creating different ways of working. And of course, the big thing that I believe and that Proudfoot believes is that if you want to get really interesting and meaty results in your business, you've got to engage people. So it's not just about the strategy. It's really, really important that you take people along the journey.
Well, as we are beginning, at least in some countries, to come out of the COVID pandemic, business is not going to be quite the same because we've spent the last 18 months, give or take, doing Zoom and Skype and you name it, and never actually touching. Of course, you can't do that with HR breathing down your neck, figuratively touching our staff. So what advice do you have for companies as they reposition themselves in terms of their management style, leadership style, et cetera, in the post-COVID world?
Yeah, I think it's so important to recognize how things have changed and to a small degree, how they've actually stayed the same as well. And so what I mean by that is that at the end of the day, we're social creatures and we really need to connect. And that's really never going to change. And what we saw through the pandemic was a couple of really interesting things. Number one, we saw that, people can change on absolutely on the back of a dime. And all of that pre-COVID where it took forever to get real change happening in a business, suddenly that went out the door. And all those people that we thought were resistant, suddenly they're all doing new and different things. So we've got to really learn some lessons from there. But I think also that whole concept of connection. It doesn't matter if you're remote or if you're at the workplace. People can be just as remote when they're sitting in their office as they are when they're sitting on a Zoom call. And so it's really important that management today, particularly frontline managers, they're the key. They hold the keys to the kingdom in terms of organizational results. Those guys, you have to be active. You've got to get in the game. You've got to connect with your people. And the way to do it best is to put that routine, that rhythm into your day. So, if you don't mind me chatting on a little bit more on that, because it is really the passion that I have around this is incredible. It's something we've called 1-5-30. It's really simple so that people can easily remember. And particularly if you're a new frontline supervisor and you're still trying to find your feet and really figure out what you should be doing, if there's one thing I would ask you to remember, I'd ask you to remember 1-5-30. Check in once a day. Doesn't even matter if it's just for a quick, hey, how's it? How are you doing? How's little Jimmy, or how's your mum doing? Then make sure that you check in once a week for a really meaningful conversation, 30 minutes. The once a day might be a few minutes, might be 15 minutes. It might be about work, might not. Once a week, let's really talk about how the job's going and a little bit of both. In the old days, you weren't really meant to get into the touchy-feely stuff. But today, you really do have to ask how people are actually doing, not just about work, but just how's the whole shape coming together? How's everything coming together? And that we'd say 5, so once a week, 5 days, 30 minutes. And then 30, is really once a month. Once a month, have a real conversation about development, about career. Look for ways you can coach and guide people. Look for ways you can just have a really, really interesting conversation that's not rushed and that really talks to the person's career ambitions and what do they want to get out of their job. So 1-5:30. Check in once a day. Don't check up, check in, really important. And that makes the difference between feeling like you're micro or macro managing. And then once a week and once a month.
It sounds like you're telling frontline managers and their superiors to kind of get off their duff, if you will, and get out onto the floor.
That's a great way of putting it. Exactly. You've got to be active. You know, the interesting thing about Proudfoot, and I've been in the business in Proudfoot for almost 35 years now. I joined when I was 12, Douglas. So yeah, no. But 35 years, what we really have learned, there's 50,000 engagements that we've done, and we've coached about a million frontline managers and supervisors, right through to executives. And if there's one thing we really have learned, if you want to move the dial on results, you've got to be active in your business. It makes it safer. It makes it more productive. It makes it in every way more engaging for the people that are in your care. And so it is about getting out and off your, what did you call it? Off your duff, getting off and getting out there and really getting in the game and understanding what's going on. It's not about micromanaging. It really is about just understanding, having a conversation, and most importantly, seeing how you, as the frontline supervisor, what can you do to remove the barriers that are preventing people from being successful? And that's really your job, right?
That is their job. And sometimes, however, the employee might not be overly forthcoming with their difficulties. They may be embarrassed to talk about difficulties or afraid, for heaven's sake, for fearing weak and then thus expendable. How do you get around that?
You know, it's a two-part answer there. One is the more routine you make your 1-5-30, the more you earn the right to allow people to have a chat with you. What we found is that where employees are reluctant to chat is when they don't really know their boss, and their boss doesn't really come out on the floor and really chat with them and want to understand, because then they think there's an ulterior motive. Then they think, oh, you know, management's coming out suddenly to see me, what's wrong? But if you've got that routine going, then people start to understand, well, hold on a minute, this is just actually, it's part of the day. And my boss is checking in with me to see how the day is going, and if there's anything, any help I need, if there's anything that's stopping me from being able to be successful. And so you really do start to earn the right to be able to have that discussion, and it breaks down a lot of the barriers. And I think that comes with getting out there and doing this routinely enough that happens. So, yep, to begin with, your guys might look at you and say, whoa, what is it that, you know, why are you suddenly here? But once you get into that routine, then they start to understand there's no ulterior motive here. There's just, how do we all together be successful?
So they aren't scattering when you turn on the lights, so to speak. Yes. Do you find it different, and do you recommend different approaches based on the physical age of the employee, i.e. Gen X, Gen Y, whatever the latest gen might be?
Yeah, you know, I do. I think that it's even bigger than that. I think that every team and every individual is different. And so you've really got to calibrate what it is that you're doing for that team and that individual. There's so many tools and so many things that you can do, but there's some really fundamental things. So, you know, we all want to connect. Most of the time we want to collaborate. People they want to have a sense of community. They want to have a reason to get out of bed in the morning. You know, they want a clean workplace, and gone are the days of lean and mean. They want clean and meaningful, you know, and they want to build their capabilities. So if you kind of bundle all of those, you know, I call it the 2 F's and the 7 C's that you can draw upon, and then you calibrate, you turn the dial up or down depending on the individuals you've got. And of course, the F's are fair trade and freedom. They're kind of the bookends for all these other C's that you can kind of pick and choose from to work with your employees. And of course, everyone wants a fair trade. They want to feel that they're doing a fair day's work for a fair day's return. They want to feel that, in good Australian speak, they want to feel that that people are fed income. They can trust them and they understand them. And then, of course, they want freedom. So they want the freedom to act and they want the freedom to just get on with their job. So if you kind of pick and choose all of those, depending on the individuals that you're working with, you are bound to find a way to really maximize what you're really after, which is great results, right? I mean,
that's what we want. We want results. You've put a lot of your ideas into a new book. Would you tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about it?
Oh, sure. I'd be delighted to. Manage to engage. What it really talks about is exactly what you just said, actually, and that's that at the end of the day, everybody wants great results, and you want to help people actually deliver remarkable results. And the challenges around that are kind of interesting because what we've seen in our business is that engagement and the ability to engage people is actually the starting point of everything. Nothing moves until people move. And so what's happened over the years is that people have thought engagement to be this HR soft and fluffy thing, that's about perks and policies and ping pong tables. And it couldn't be further from the truth. Engagement is a really hard DNA, put it into the DNA of the frontline supervisors, build it into the way that they work, because engagement is what gives you those remarkable results. It's almost saying that you've got a fit and a healthy business. The fit is the productive side, the healthy is the engagement side, and you can't have one without the other.
In addition to managing, if you would say, downward to your staff, the manager also has to manage upward to whoever his or her boss is. What do you recommend in that regard when you have to deal with somebody like that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, because I think engagement is a 360 degree. If you really look at what makes work a great place to be, it's that you've got colleagues that you really trust, admire, and want to work with. You've got teams that you love working with, and you've got bosses that you really like to work with. And so for you, whether you're the frontline supervisor or whether you're a team member, you have an equal responsibility to bring to the game your involvement, right? Now, the tricky bit is that your involvement is usually actually impacted by your boss. So most of our engagement comes from our boss. And I'm a big believer that, and I'm probably one of the top 3% of engaged. I love my job. I have done for 35 years. So I come to work with a different philosophy than lots of people because I'm already there. But the guys who are still thinking about, okay, I've got a boss, I've got to report to them, you've got to play your role, but your boss has a huge responsibility to make sure that the interaction between the two of you is right. And so I always think that one of the basics that really helps is make sure that we all understand what the expectations are, both ways. Set those out, agree them. It's not a case of the boss telling you what to do. It's let's agree what the expectations are. We all understand, and then let's get on with it. And if you kind of use that as the absolute starting point, you can build from there.
Pamela, this is a bit off topic, and maybe not. Our viewers are looking over your right shoulder and seeing a strange individual wielding something. For our radio listeners, it looks like a puppet of some sort. Would you describe what it is and why you have that featured so prominently in your office?
Oh, it is a shame you can't see him, but he is Charlie. And I did put a mask on him so that he's completely pandemic friendly. But he's holding a little old BlackBerry, one of the first BlackBerries that came out. And he's looking down at it. And really, it's a reminder to me. And it's all about heads up. It really says, and if you're a manager today, it's a way to really get you to prompt yourself that heads up is about taking your nose out of your devices, out of your technology, and connecting with people. It's great to get all the data in the world. It's great to have the access to all the technology in the world. But unless you get your head up, unless you actually raise your nose from it and go heads up and connect with the people around you, look, listen, and learn, you're really not going to engage people. And so that's a reminder to me for all these Zoom calls. We're still in lockdown here. And so for me, it's really a reminder to make sure that I connect with people.
Pamela, you have been very generous with your time and your thoughts, but there must be something I haven't been bright enough to ask you and you want to get out. What is that?
Oh gosh, I think that the underlying question is, how do I really engage in today's world with all the things that are coming at me? And I think supervisors sometimes get a tough rap. Managers in general get a tough rap. They're often looked at, and the finger is pointed to say, "Hey, it's your problem. You're the reason that people are not engaged, and why all the engagement stats are so low." And I would say it's time to have a little bit of empathy, because if you sit back and you look at management today, it is so complex. There is so much coming at you, so many plates to spin and balls to bounce up and down and keep going in the air, that you've got to sit back sometimes and say, it's not that we're not engaging because we don't want to. Managers don't get up in the morning and say, right then, I'm going to really be terrible today and I'm not going to engage anybody. No, they get up and they say, oh my goodness, how can I manage everything that's coming at me and still connect and engage with people? And so if there's one thing I could remind everybody, it would be engagement is what drives results. And so it's the priority. It's the one thing that you want to say to yourself, did I engage today? I've got to make time for it. So thank you for letting me really make sure that gets out there.
Okay. One quick thing, just for my housekeeping. Where are you located? What city?
I'm actually in Toronto.
Toronto. Oh my gosh. Very good. All right. I notice you have company offices in Sydney, Toronto, Pleasanton in the Silicon Valley, and I can't remember where else. London.
Yeah, our major offices are London in the UK and Atlanta in Georgia. I happen to live in Toronto, and normally I'm doing 500,000 miles a year and I'm all over the place. So this past 12 months, I've hunkered down in Toronto and run the business globally from here.
Oh, and that's worked obviously quite well.
It has, yeah. Thank goodness for the ability to use technology, but still keep your head up.
Well, that's true. A lot of businesses are going to come out of this, though, I'm afraid, much weaker than when they went into it. And I'm not talking just about, the restaurants. Everybody sees restaurants on TV that are vacant, et cetera. But so many other businesses are going to be lame for a while, at least. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough ride for a lot of them. And, the ability to really look at the business and say to yourself, are we doing the right work? Is it getting done in the right way? And keep that customer in mind, keep the employee in mind. You need both. You've got to have an engaged customer, engaged employee, and then really make sure that what connects them is the work that gets done. Is it the right stuff at the right time? Am I doing it to the quality that I need? And once you get beyond the basics of, hunker down and make sure those costs are right, the rest of it is to really make sure that the work that
You've been watching the Biz News Podcast. We welcome your input. Send your email to editor@biznews.com. Thanks for watching.